We are headed out towards Big Red from Birdsville, around about 15 k's. It's where we turn off this sealed road. Have a bit of a look around out there. Have a bit of a play on the sand dune, as you do. Okie dokes. A little bit more information for you. Reading the sign, ancient landscape. All drivers must be defined track only. Use the etc., etc. Defined track. National Park. Closed 1st of December to 15th of March every year. And we're still on dirt road pressures. We're not down to sand pressures yet. So this will be interesting. Let's see how we go. We'll just give it a crack in high range. Of course, this is just, you can go over there, you can go wherever. We're going to go bada bing, this away. So I thought we'd give it a crack in without changing the pressures and see what happens. I haven't even pressed a button yet. This is a standard four-wheel drive. We just thought we'd, you don't know until you give it a go. Look, now it's regained a bit. Wheels were spinning a bit, but we're still making progress. So we're on about 25, 26 PSI in a Prado, still in high range. So Big Red is quite firm at the moment. Obviously coming up from the east heading west is usually the easy side. There's a few different ways up over there. So we'll just park it up on the top here and have a look around, see who else is around, and possibly put our sand flag on if we're going to have a bit of a play around. There goes that traction control. Have a look at this view I'm going to show you.
Still now.
Yeah. Oh, ho, ho, not quite. Bit of fun though.
Here we go, Mr. Brody. Whoop, and Anthony Stacey. Come on. What's going to happen when once it's stuck in that one?
Too soon, but piece of cake until you get to this bit here, where you've got to give it a bit of berries to get over it. And then we go back down the other one. Not going to happen, I can tell you. I'll call it the flies are distracting me too much. So that's, we're here to have some fun. We could let the tyres down even and you go, oh, how do I get over that? Okay, here he goes. He's dropped the pressures down to about 9 or 10 PSI. Matex. Oh, this bit we'll see. Yeah, he's going to go that fast. He's going to be over it. Oh no! Slow. Doing it hard and fast. Funny thing is you don't have to do that. It's all about a bit of momentum about here. What would I know? I couldn't get up at enough speed and you'll be up, that's for sure. Yeah, see? So we're just headed from Big Red out west, just gone over the first sand dune, having a bit of a look around this side of the Simo, headed out to POEPPEL Corner. We'll once again let you know what is happening out on the Simo, this side, on the Queensland side. Sorry about the vibration from the corrugations, but have a look how green it is out here on the Simo. Someone needs to bring the lawnmower. Grass is growing up in the middle of the track. Bloody fantastic out here on the desert. Out on the Simo, after the rain, been a few boggy mud patches with the side tracks going around, avoiding the wet obviously is the easy option to not get stuck and to not get covered in mud, unless you want to get covered in mud. It's up to you. Just have a look at that, eh? Awesome. Avoiding the mud, avoiding the mud, avoiding the mud, of course. Bit of water, plenty of water still sitting around. We'll bypass all that. We have another Prado oncoming. We better check and see if it's someone we know, because you never know. Victorian. So we are cruising across the Simo, and I've been trying not to do too much footage because it's kind of all very similar, but it's all very different, if that makes sense. So it's all very similar, and if we just roll the camera all day, some people are going to think it's boring, some people are going to go, oh wow, why is that all we got, so whatever, at the end of the day. Just thought I'd roll the camera a bit, so we'll get a little bit more here and there. So we've been, I think we're at Big Red just before lunch. It was before lunch, about 10. Might have got there about 10, mucked around to about 11. Got some footage of a bit of mucking around. Some of the guys let the tyres down a bit more and they got up one of the harder bits. I was lazy, I only wanted to go down to about whatever it was, about 16 to 18 depending which tyre, which didn't get you up the hard bit. Well, you probably could if you went hard enough, but I don't want to, go racing crazy, whatever. 4 Prados heading west, passing Q20. So basically, that's what you do when you're cruising on the Simo. It's always been a Channel 10 call out about every 5k's or so. how many cars in your group, which way you're heading. That way, those close enough to hear, you know, probably the 10k thing, depending if you're both on top of a sand dune at the same time or not. So to have an idea what might be oncoming, or you know, if you've got a group catching up or a group ahead, if you've got a group ahead, that helps with, well, if you listen to what's happening with them, then you might have a fair idea what might be coming type thing, if you know what I mean. So if that makes sense, I hope it does. Always over the crest of the dunes. Look, the sand's quite firm at the moment. It's really an easy drive, you know, with a few obstacles like usual, and probably more than usual because of a bit of water damage. But this area through here is quite different to what we've seen the last few hours. We've had obviously had a lunch break and another break and a couple other stops, whatever the case may be. What time is it now? Just before 4 o'clock. So we've been driving, I'd say, well, on and off for about 4 hours. We're heading to POEPPEL Corner. We may camp there or make our way back a little bit. It's quite warm. Always slow over the dune. You don't know what's there. You can't see. It's generally going to be okay, but just take it slow because you can have a bit of a drop off over it, if you know what I mean. It's 37 degrees out there, so it's 4 o'clock. Basically, you know, if you don't mind a bit of 37 and hot sun, you can set up camp now. You know, if you're normally doing a normal Simo crossing. But look, to be quite honest, it's just hot. You know, you're just sitting in the hot sun, which is okay. And there's plenty of flies out there too. So on a trip like this, what I would typically do is start driving by about 8. So it's definitely a driver's trip. Start driving by about 8, because otherwise, again, you're just sitting there, the sun's coming out. I mean, the morning's the best time to take it easy, I suppose. You know, go for a walk, have a look around, take some photos, whatever you want to do, depending if you pick the best camp spot. But you know, stopping at 3 or 4, you know, I'd love to stop and camp every day at lunchtime, or 2 or 3, which is, you know, a good target to have camp by about 2, 3 or 4 type thing, generally on trips. But when it's just hot and dry and just sitting around in the sun, it's kind of basically a bit hot. So it's kind of like, you know, sorry, I'm just listening to the radio. So yeah, basically the plan is, look, you know, it's quite hot. You know, the flies start backing off once it starts to get dark and that. So I sort of think, you know, you don't want to be driving all day either, but you kind of are. And if you don't, then you do. So, and everybody is variable on that, you know what I mean? Some people just want to stay in the car because it's too hot out there and the flies, and some people are probably going, oh, that's a lot of driving, but it's take it easy driving. We're just cruising. That's why it's taken so many hours to do 100 k's or whatever. We've got about 35 k's from POEPPEL, so there you go. Bit of information for you. We got a grasshopper on the bonnet. Well, not a grasshopper. Well, probably is a grasshopper. It's some sort of hopper. Not the usual green one. You can't see that. Probably better if we bring it back, eh? There you go. You might see him there now. Can you see him on the left side of the bonnet? Might be right on the edge of the picture. I can't see. Something like that, anyway. He's hitching a ride, mate. What do you reckon? Send him a bill? Tax invoice? Travelling across the Simpson Desert. A bit like a speed camera. There he goes. He took off. He's gone now. See you later. So, this is what it looks like in this section. A bit further up, I'll try and capture a bit more footage. Alright, time for a couple little driving tips for sand driving in general, and I suppose, more particularly to relating to driving on the Simo, every now and then say, okay, let's first thing, high range or low range? Good question. Well, depends on the temperature of the vehicle, the load, as in, you know, how modified, how heavy you are, if you're towing or not. Generally, sand dunes and sand driving, if it's soft sand, I'm going to say low range. So today we started off in low range, usually low range, you know, usually fourth, and you're usually moving along at 20 or 30 k's type thing, you know. So, but there's a lot of really good flat tracks along here. And quite often you're doing more like, you know, you can do 40 or 50 type thing, you know, that's about it, without racing around. You know, we're just cruising here, we're on holidays, right? Relax, enjoy, cruisy, whatever. So anyway, we started off in low because that keeps the transmission temps cooler, you know, because the transmission and everything's not working as hard. Then if you're racing to keep up with everybody else that's in high range, tearing across the flat sections, you're probably revving a bit too hard for low range, right? So we went back to high range. Now the downside is, without any transmission cooler, this is a 2019 1GD FTV with the 6-speed auto, as many people watching would know, which we're not happy with the engine. It's underpowered, it's too small for the size of the vehicle, and there'll be other information in other videos on either or both of our channels, because people need to know about it. It is definitely underpowered. Some people will say it's fine, but it's not really. Just because you remap it and make it go okay, it's still only got how many cubic cc's it's got, but we're going to talk about that in another video. So the downside to high range is, well, I've seen the transmission temp up over 100 degrees. It's currently sitting on right about 100, which, to be quite honest, that's what this vehicle does just about all the time. It's always on 100, unless you're driving around in the typical Touareg tractor traffic areas, suburbia, you know what I mean? If you're, you know, going to the shops and back, school and back, your friends and back, gym and back, all these places close by, where you're sort of doing 60, 70, 80. That's the sort of speeds where an engine this size is really efficient, and the software in the transmission works okay. It gets converter lock in fourth and it stays relatively cool. But once you're traveling at higher speeds or working a bit harder, this one, they do get hot quite easily. So it's not too bad. It's still sitting on 100. It's fairly consistent at 100, but it was on about 90 in low range. Okay, so a little bit of difference there, and a lot of this is downhill and it's fairly flat. It's fairly easy going. We're certainly not pushing it. The engine's spending most of its time on about 1500 revs as an average, you know, down to 1000, you know, up to 2000. I can't imagine it's going to be over 2. And we're mainly sort of high range, second and third is generally what we're using. So it's whatever you prefer, you know, each to their own, whether you want high or low range, whatever works for you. While the firm ground conditions like this, and fairly smooth generally, you know, a bit rough in places, but it's fairly smooth, so you can move along. Like now we'd be revving in fourth, 30 k's, you know, 35. We don't have to do 35, but you know, this thing sort of floats around on it pretty well, as many bit. And the other little tip I wanted to put out there is, every now and then you'll find yourself going a little bit too fast, and you see a bit of a crest or a double speed hump or a triple or whatever, a whole heap of speed humps, you know what I mean? Undulations or bumps. See how the car sort of bounces a little bit? Well, they're not too bad, but every now and then you'll get one that's worse, right? And you like this, see, we're bouncing there, we're bouncing here, we're bouncing there, we've got another dip here. That's not bad. We'll keep driving, and what happens is, like here you go, oh, there's a bit of a drop there, right? So you can have a quick touch on the brakes and slow it down a bit, because if you drop or dive into something too hard, you're going to compress the front suspension, the springs, and you could dig your bumper bar or bull bar, whatever it is you've got. You know, we don't run a bull bar. We prefer the comfort, the driving pleasure of a non-modified front end. It just handles and drives so much better from experience. But if you're flying along, let's just say flying, you know, exaggerating, right? And then you want to go, it brakes, and sometimes the nose dips down and it makes it worse because you've sort of gone over something. And what's the what have I got here? Someone's put us on the back plate there. So what you can do is, if you know what I mean now, if you've driven these sorts of things, I'm talking to the people that have done it, I suppose, or to keep this in mind when you do it your first time. See what I mean? It's just kind of like this. It's a little bit bouncy, and like, I'm not going to do it because I prefer not to. But if it's flat for a while, you pick up some speed, right? So you're going along like this, and then all of a sudden you get a few of those bouncy bits. The other thing you can do often is, if you're reading the track, is just go to the side a bit like that, and you'll miss, like, okay, there's a hole in the right here, so we go to the left like that. So we did more of a turn and less of a bounce. So you can often dodge the deepest hole, right? So come along here on the right is our deepest one. Again, we're just cruising anyway. We're doing about 30 k's, so there's a bit of a drop. But sometimes it's a technique that I've been using. I didn't plan it, it's just something that happened naturally. But a lot of people might not think of it. They just hit the brakes, and then the car bounces around a bit too much. You can't always hit the brakes, or it doesn't work out good because you're compounding that factor of the fronts bouncing, compressing. You're on the brakes. You notice when you press the brakes, the front of the vehicle compresses. Yeah, it goes down. So obviously it should be controlled if everything's set up right and all your suspension's working right. But even if it's working right, it's going to add to the effect. So sometimes you can just give it a bit of a tweak left or right if you're reading the track. If you're onto it, you're sort of going, okay, well, what's going on here? And you might just, like, let's say it was there, you might just sort of go like that a little bit, right? Because that was a fair drop, and you just make it better, because where everybody goes and where everybody lands can often be eroded out deeper, right? So here you might just go, okay, to the right, not completely off the track, but just on the edge, or you might go left there, because have a look where the tracks, if you have a look right where the tracks are, and I know you can't see it, but when you're out on the tracks, the deepest and most, it's where everybody drives in the same spot, where everyone dives in there and everyone spins their wheel. And you can't always do it if you've got trees and stuff like that. And often one side's got that drop in more than both sides, you know what I mean? It's more one side. So if you see which one's got the deeper hole and go either side of that hole on the deeper side, then let's say it was on the right and you went right, you're going to bring your left wheel onto the crest in the middle. Right, it's more of a natural ground where people aren't driving, So, but again, it all depends. Like, see here, it's not overgrown, but there's a few bushes around. You might be going bush into some sticks and whatever if you tried to do it. But it's something to think about anyway. It's a good way that I use more than I use the brakes, reading the track and just sort of going, okay, well, because this is quite a, well, I won't call it annoying, but it's a repetitive, along this section right here, it's been quite repetitive with that bounciness, and we haven't seen speeds over about 40. We're in second. We haven't changed for a very long time. Transition temps come down to 98 for that reason, consistency. Again, the rev's still on about right now 1700, so we're just cruising. Hey, fuel economy. Some people might be thinking, what fuel economy? So right now, in the hour and 10 minutes since our last engine stop-start when we had a break, currently it says 17.2. Okay, so that's since we started the engine just over an hour ago. Average speed 28 k's. So a few statistics there for you. Hour and 9 minutes, 28 k's an hour, and 17.2 is the mileage. And generally, it's a bit better than what the electronics, the computer says. So it might be 16.5 or 16.7 or 8, but thereabouts. Allow 17. Always overestimate the fuel. So if you're going to do a Simpson crossing in a diesel, and this is, remember, this is pretty light. This is a GX. Okay, GX, so nice and slow because you can have some deep holes like that. GX, nice and light, 2 people only, minimal modifications, only the necessary items for touring, nothing that's unnecessary. So if you're heavier, if you've got a GXL and you've got a whole family and you've got more modifications, you're going to use a bit more, you're going to be carrying more weight, doing it a bit harder. If you've got bigger tyres, this is standard size tyres, so they're going to work best for for fuel economy, for the engine, looking after the vehicle. See, right here there's quite a deep, you wouldn't want to be flying through there, oh, you know, running late, night run. You'd probably launch across that and land in the next one. It could do some damage. Remember where you are, very remote. And it's quite hard and expensive to get help out of here, so don't do it on your own. It's always wise to travel in a small group, I say, is good, because a big group you've got more chance you're going to have car trouble. And with the right vehicles, you've got to be careful which vehicle. These days, I mean, this is the thing, most vehicles are very reliable, the new cars, particularly towards at the start of their lives, you know, so anyway, hope you enjoyed some scenery and grabbed a bit of information out of that, and you get the picture. This is probably not the nicest section along here. There's been some really awesome, you come over the dunes and you just go wow. So I'll pop a few photos in there, hopefully that works for you. What have we got? About 27 k's to go, I believe, so we're getting there slowly. About another hour by the sounds of it. Okay, clay pan. Sometimes you got to go around it, but it looks like this is a pretty well cut track, and it looks dry even outside of it, but I think I'll take the one that's been used and packed, and the heat and the sun's beating down on it, so just wait there one at a time. We'll just make sure it's sweet. Might drag the bash plate in a couple of places here, I reckon.
So what gear are you using?
Doesn't matter, it's bone dry, it's just clearance really. If it stays like this, it's not a problem. You could even almost cut a new track yourself, but let's not try it at this stage. There's a bit of water sitting in some of those, but I reckon it's all dried up. I reckon it's a lot of old. You know, I'm going to get up, I'm going to push the buttons a bit and get up on top of this. So it does feel, yeah, it's dry as. It is actually really dry. Here's a bit that's a bit rough. You've got to watch it's not wet and rough. Crawl through that, no problem.
Brody over. Receiving call.
Yeah, this is all good. No dramas. Okay, let me see. I'm just going on the edge of it. Yeah, when we drive on the edge, it's packing it down, so that's all good, I reckon. Quite happy with that. There's a little bit of rutted out where everyone's been using the same line, which is where I'll go as far as to say I'm going to get up on the edge of it. I'm out of the ruts now, just to prove the point that, yeah, it's fine. Head across, it's bone dry. I may push the limits a bit once we get closer to the edge, but when I go off the side, oh, no issues. So you can see people actually being out on it, cutting it up, having a bit of fun. I think that's what I did last time. Whenever you drive on this after it's been rained on, see, we're off it now, whatever, you know, looks like whatever. Up a bit in some soft spots if you could be an adventure, you never know, right? So I'm turning a bit just to see. Should go back and show you what's going on, right? Yeah, I think we should do that. To be fair, pretty confident. Quite often the worst parts are near the edges, so I'm quite confident that we'll be okay. Show you our tracks that we just made. So when you give it a bit of berries and turn, you can see those marks, and you could rip through to something that's a bit more soft, but It's not anything going to be too bad, so just keep it moving. Alright? Bit of fun. Whatever. It's all good. We're out of here. It's my little test. I thought I'd drive out and see how it went, and the further you went, the further you sunk in. Don't risk it for the biscuit.